Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President of Dale Carnegie Training, Tokyo, Japan. My special guest today is an old friend of mine, Philippe Jardin, who is the country manager for Pierre Fabre. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So, how is it that you're here in Japan? I mean, you've been here quite a number of years now. How many years?
Yes.
20 plus something?
Yes. I made a calculation the other day, 23 years.
23
if
years,
you add all the stays in Japan.
All the stays, right?
Yes.
So why Japan? Why are you here? What's happened that you came to Japan?
Well, I think I was very influenced by my parents in the first place because, I was born in the French West Indies. No, I was not born in the mainland France, but in the French West Indies. And I lived 2 years in Africa. And I got some kind of interest in overseas views from a French point of view. And my parents were really interested in Asia. So I got this kind of, influence. I practiced judo when I was young, and I was quite attracted by this country. And what happened is that while I did my studies in a business school, I had the opportunity to learn Japanese and to actually do some training periods in Japan. So I learned the language. And, I put the figure and the whole, as I studied, it was so much difficult to learn that, I wanted to have some kind of return on investment. And the more I learned, the more, some doors opened to me in terms of business opportunities and job opportunities. And I found a woman. That was also another reason. Yeah. Yes, for the reason for staying in Japan.
And did you find her here, or did you find her somewhere else?
I found her here in Japan. She became my wife, and we've been married for 22 years now.
Wow. Okay. Very good.
2 kids. So yes, I think this is a very banal story for most of the foreigners who've been in Japan for a long time.
I'm sure it is, and typical too. So when you first were here, you were studying at some stages, then you came back to work. When you first came here to work, when was that, and what were you doing?
I was a student in a business school in France, and we as part of the curriculum, you're supposed to do some internships in companies. It could be in France, or it could be anywhere in the world. But I chose to actually practice my Japanese, so I did all my internships in Japanese companies. I started in '93, so I did two-month internships in Japanese companies. The first one was Osaka Mitsui O.S.K. Lines, based in Toranomon. Exactly. And the other one was Yamaha Motors. Okay. And I actually worked on the line in Shizuoka Prefecture in Iwata. Okay. So it was really
a
unique experience to learn about, how they deal with manufacturing.
And also how quick the line is in Japan too. It shocked me. I worked on the line for Ford Motor Car Company in Australia.
Exactly.
But geez, the line in Japan is moving at a really rapid pace.
Yes.
Yeah. And so when did you come back to Japan actually after you graduated to actually work?
I did that for 5 months. I went back to continue my studies, and I came back 1 year later. And this time I did an internship for 1 year at Sony Corporation, based in Shinagawa in marketing for television.
Okay.
So I did that for 1 year.
So this is sort of postgraduate, was it? You'd graduated?
No, I was still a student. So I was when the first time I came to Japan, I was 21.
Yeah.
And so I was still a student. So I was learning the language as I was doing also my internship.
Right.
And then I decided, once I graduated in '96, I decided also to continue. And then I started in L'Oréal in marketing.
In France?
3 months in France, and then I was sent
here.
Here.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
You had exposure to manufacturing, to logistics, to, Sony, tech, banking, got lots of things going on there, I guess, today. But you chose luxury and cosmetics. So what made you choose that area? You started to get some options there. Well,
in my studies, business school, I think the doors are pretty open. Some people choose to go into finance, others in human resources, accounting. I chose marketing because I was interested in the two aspects of marketing. I was interested in understanding the consumer, what they had in mind. So the psychological aspect of marketing was really appealing to me, and also the creativity, because you build brands one of my key values is beauty. It's very important for me to work for brands I like, for beautiful brands, and I've been quite lucky to that extent because I've always been involved with very beautiful brands. And beauty is the five senses. It's not only visual beauty, but it can be also taste. You know, in Japanese, oishi, tasty is beautiful taste. So, and I was in my previous job, I was in the fine food industry. So beauty is for the five senses, and that's something that's really important for me.
So, okay, you're in France in L'Oréal for 3 months, and then straight away you're sent here.
Yes.
And do they take you back into headquarters after that, or they kept you here?
Well, I met my wife when I was in L'Oréal, and there was no position in Japan for me. So I wanted to stay in Japan. So I moved to the LVMH group.
Oh,
I worked in the liquor industry for 4 years in marketing.
Right.
For
So
Hennessy.
how long was L'Oréal that period?
L'Oréal was actually, it was a fixed term period because it was actually, at the time there was still the military service in France, but you had the possibility to do actually a longer period of what we call national service in a French company based overseas. So based, I mean,
It's very flexible, isn't it? Having that type of thinking, isn't it? Right.
Yes. Most people would go to the military, but in my case, you know, I found this job. So
Because Australia would be struggling to go through the jungle somewhere in the tropics up north, where it's mosquitoes, crocodiles, and unpleasantness. That sounds much better.
that was probably the best destination to be. Yes.
And so L'Oréal was how long before you?
It was 1 year and a half.
1 year and a half, yeah.
1 year and a half in Japan, plus the 3 months,
3 months
in the head office.
Okay, right.
Yes.
And so then you decide that you want to stay, so you need a job, and then you find the next stage of LVMH.
yes,
So
marketing
which part of LVMH were you in?
So the Hennessy part.
Okay.
So the cognac, the brandy. Yes. And it was a very exciting job.
It's interesting because Japan's, in my imagination, is not much of a big cognac drinking nation. Have I got that wrong?
Well, at the time it was quite a big market. Actually, during the bubble area, Japan was the by far number one market for Hennessy.
Was it? Okay.
It used to be, at that time, in the early 90s, it was like, it was representing like 80% of the profit of the entire Hennessy company.
Wow.
But then, you know, after the bubble, the sales went down, and actually the United States took over, and also the rest of Asia. So it was quite a difficult market.
When you're at L'Oréal, when you're at LVMH with the Hennessy part, were you actually managing anybody at this point in time, or you were a marketer, you were actually with the team working, or as an individual contributor, or do you actually
I was an individual contributor, so I was part of the Hennessy team, and I had I was a brand manager, so part of a team of different brand managers, and we had a marketing manager.
Right.
So at that time, I didn't have the experience of managing people yet.
No. Okay. So how long were you at LVMH for?
6 years in total. So 4 years for Hennessy, based in Japan, and 2 years at Louis Vuitton, based in France.
Oh, okay. You went
And
back.
this is where I got my first manager experience, because I did until the shift.
Yeah.
Actually, I did an MBA just between. So I left and then I came back to the LVMH group, 1 year MBA.
Where did you do the 1 year MBA?
A school called INSEAD.
Yes, I'm a graduate.
You're a
A
graduate?
short course.
Short course. Okay, good.
Sales management at
yes.
INSEAD. I did a short course there.
Good, yes. I was 6 months in Singapore and 4 months in Fontainebleau.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
Great.
So I did in 2002.
Yeah, I did mine in Singapore. Yeah.
Oh, Singapore, yes. So you were
campus,
in Ayer Raja Avenue on
I
the
went
campus,
up to the
yes.
campus
So
there, yeah.
I did the first 6 months there
Okay.
in 2002. Yes. And then I came back to the LVMH group for 2 years in the Champs-Élysées store of Louis Vuitton. So the biggest store of Louis Vuitton in the world. Yes.
Wow. And you were then managing people at that time?
So I was managing, yes.
This is store staff or marketing
Yes, store
people?
staff. So 200 staff at the time, and I managed up to 20. So they were in different teams. So I was a team manager, and above that there was a store director.
Right.
So actually, the reason why I chose was to have a managerial experience. It was my first time to manage people, and also it was a good opportunity to have a retail experience as well, to work in a store.
This is interesting, because most people coming at it from the other direction, they've been overseas working, managing, then they come to Japan, now they've got to manage Japanese, right? So there's always that cultural change. Question for you.
Yes.
Japan is very good on service, mindset, pleasing the customer, omotenashi, all that type of stuff, right? So And I'm sure probably at that time there were probably a lot of Japanese tourists probably coming into the
Yes.
headquarters as well, head store as well. Did you find there were things you took from your Japan experience as a manager
Yes.
that you're able to apply managing French people? I presume they're all French people in the store.
Well, in the stores, actually, it was, it was very international.
Was it?
So
Okay.
in the team, there were Japanese,
Right.
Swedish,
Right.
Italian, European.
Right, everything.
Actually, we could deal with any type of customers in terms of language.
Okay, then was there
yes.
something you found to deal with the team
Yes.
from your Japan experience that you found was useful as a leader?
As a leader, I think, when you make the choice to come to Japan, you have to be very open-minded because you get you get exposed to a very different set of values, and sometimes it can be very frustrating. The first time was great when I came to Japan for the first 5 months. The second time was tougher because there were some things I didn't understand. It was so different in terms of culture, and I think it takes a lot of openness. And a lot of empathy to understand, people who are thinking really differently. So I guess this kind of open mindset really helped me when it came to dealing with managing a team with people from so different nationalities. So I think the ability to listen and also to read between the lines. The first thing I learned in Japan was in Japanese you say kuki o yomu. To read the air.
Read the air. So
it's, in French we would say to read between the lines. I don't know if you have the same expression
okay.
in
Yeah,
English.
in English we have the same thing.
Yes. And I think this is the ability to understand people without necessarily having to ask the question all the time, especially with women. Because there was a lot of women in staff, and I think that might sound like a broad generalization, but sometimes women, when I see with my wife, they expect us to understand without asking, this kind of thing. So I think this kind of openness, to be open, and also the ability to work on your intuition, to understand people without asking. Really helped me in my job.
That's interesting. Kukuyomo on steroids in Paris. That's great. So when did you come back to Japan after that?
Well, I came back just after the 2 years. I was hunted by a German company called Villeroy & Boch, and they proposed me to take charge of the Japanese subsidiary. So I was not planning to go back to Japan, to be honest. That was not something that I was looking for.
Okay.
But I realized that I was 32. To have the opportunity to actually manage a business unit it was quite a small organization, but still with 60 people. So I thought it was.
What was their main product line?
Tableware.
Tableware. Okay.
Yes. So it's a German company. Worldwide they competed with Wedgwood, with these brands, and So I took the opportunity. There was a risk because I was in a very safe environment at Louis Vuitton, and I was taking the challenge of managing a subsidiary that was losing money. So we had to make a turnaround, and we managed to break even after 2 years.
So you're parachuted into the company as the president for Japan.
Yes.
Relatively young.
Yes.
Haven't had that much experience working in Japan, studying, yes, interning, yes, but actually leading, no.
Yes.
First time to lead in Japan, although you had your multinational experience back in Paris. That's great.
Yes.
So what some of the things were challenging for you when you arrived here to take over an existing team, a team that's obviously been struggling to make a profit, and there's obviously change coming. There's probably some concern about am I going to lose my job? Is he here to close the office? I mean, I'm sure there are many, many things going on in people's minds when you turned up. What were some of the challenges you faced?
The biggest challenge I was faced was the profitability challenge. So the way I was told when they recruited me, said, sales are going double digit up. You will you will benefit from all the efforts of your predecessor, so don't worry. But in fact, when I joined the company, I realized the main issue was the bottom line. The challenge was to change the culture from a mere top line culture, which was just about building sales, to a more profit-driven objective. So what I did was really to bring home to the team that the key focus and the key objective should be to break even. And that was, I would repeat that all the time. And we had to work together to improve profitability. And yes.
So, from their point of view, you turn up, they don't know you.
Yes.
You're talking about, we're not doing top line growth anymore, we're going to go for profitability or at least break even. It's quite a different direction.
Yes.
How did you convince them to follow you? How did you get them to get on board with what you wanted to do?
I think I think a good leader has to have a mix of bottom up and top down way of working. I'm pretty bottom up, I would say. So what I did was I organized some interviews with all of them individually. Asking different type of questions. That's what I always do in the first 3 months of a new assignment. I interview everybody. If the size of the company allowed, but I've been in companies where it was possible up to now. So I would ask 3 types of questions. I would ask about how they evaluate the power of the company in Japan. And they could give a grade out of 5, from 1 to 5, or from 1 to 10. And I ask always why, the positives and the negatives, what should be improved. Same on the brand. What is the power of the brand in Japan? And their level of satisfaction in their job. So it's a very macro type of approach to a more personal type of approach. And it allows me first to listen to them, to show that I'm interested in what they have to tell me. And the second thing, it gives me a lot of very precious information, to make a diagnosis about the issues, about the strength of the company and also the issues. So by doing that, and I just show them, this is what you told me. So it allows me to
So you did a post-interview presentation,
yes,
findings to everyone.
Yes, exactly.
That would have been fascinating.
Yes, that's the kind of thing I do. I did that in my current job, to be honest. And so that's the kind of systematic approach that I've had. And I try to do that all the time to show them, this is what you told me. Here are our strengths. This is our issues. And let's try to work together about what we should do. But the profitability thing is something that it necessarily didn't have in mind so much.
Right.
So that's something that I had, and I needed to distill a little bit in the thing, repeating over that. It was very important.
Also, you're new, and Japanese being fairly conservative,
yes,
perhaps guarded. How willing were they to share? Like, here's what I think about the organization. Here's what I think about the brand. Here's how I feel with you, who they don't even know you yet.
Well, what I found, much to my surprise, is that people actually like to talk, and they often have, they have a lot of frustrations in their job. They might be happy, but they always have, also some frustrations, negative points that they want to be improved, and they see an opportunity in a newcomer, especially in the top management, to help them on that. So I've never found, when I did that exercise, some resistance or people hiding me anything. That might happen on an individual level, but I think, if you interview 30 people, 30% or even more, in the case of Villeroy & Boch, more around 60 persons, you get enough information to get a pretty clear picture about, the strength. I mean, the strength, and the weaknesses of the organization, the brand, and the opportunities that you may find. Yes.
So, having done that, you're starting to lead the team. How did you get them behind your idea about we've got to get the top line and bottom line in sync here, and make sure that the bottom line is actually performing at a profitable level as well as a double-digit growth? How did you get them behind that idea? How did you get them engaged in that?
The way I did it was to share it with them. This time was a bit top down. In terms of approach, it was to make an analysis about the cost structure, and it was pretty clear that the top line was going up, but the bottom line was also going down. So the more we had sales, the bigger the red figures were. So it was going like that.
Okay.
So actually, we were financing our sales increase with more deficit. With
This
higher
is because your
figures.
marginal costs were increasing.
Yes,
as a
yes.
result
We
of
had
the
an issue
sales?
with our gross margin. Basically, we were building sales with our prices were too low.
Okay.
We had too many variable costs, so we had to work really on our gross margin, not only the cost structure, but also all the variable costs. All the freight from our warehouse to the customer. Also, we were using very, very expensive gift boxes for a product that was not so expensive. So one way to actually bring home to them, and have all of us think about, the cost structure, was to work on a specific project, which was what should we do with our gift boxes? Because there were two options. Some thought we had to have very, very luxurious big boxes. Typically, the people working in our own stores think we should keep them. And people who were working for department stores thought that, folded big boxes were just good enough. So at the end, we took the decision just not to go with those very luxurious big boxes anymore, but shift to cheaper big boxes. And by doing that, we saved 2% of gross profit.
2% is huge.
Yeah, 2%. So it used 2% of our sales, which went into profit.
Nice.
That was a big thing, but that was difficult because people had different perspectives and at some point, when we looked at the cost of the gift boxes, and we just took an average price, we said maybe we should increase our prices by 5% to finance that. So we did both actually. We ended doing both. So and that's how the 5% target worked out.
Achieved, yeah.
But that was really by involving everybody in the discussion on the gift boxes that we thought that made all the team think about cost structures, and what we were doing here was just to improve the profitability of the company. And because it was like a rat race. We were building sales, but we're not building any profit. That's kind of basic thing to do. But I think it was a cultural change because the team was really thinking only about the top line, and so we had a more balanced. I would say it was important, of course, to have growth, but
And
the top line was
sometimes
also.
in Japan, people are ninja-like in their resistance, right?
Yes.
They don't show any obvious target of resistance, but they're resisting. And underground, they're resisting. They're talking about the company's direction's the wrong way. This new boss doesn't know what he's talking about. We're killing the brand here by getting these cheap boxes. How are we going to beat our competitors if we don't have the right image and the right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So did you find that, or again, one of the problems is because it's ninja-like, you never know. It's sort of subterranean. But did you get that type of resistance, or you actually found that when people signed on, they really signed on?
I had some resistance in the sense that there were different opinions, that my direct reports didn't have so much clear ideas, especially my sales and marketing director. She had not clear ideas. So I was faced with different opinions, really a split between the people in charge of department stores and those in charge of our direct stores. So that was kind of tough. So what I did was I took my time to have the debate. Maybe if I were to, it's easy to say today. Maybe I took a little bit more, too much time, I would say.
How much time did you take?
Time would be the number of times we discussed the issue.
Oh, okay.
Right. So maybe we'll probably discuss it 3 times.
Okay.
And I think twice would have been probably enough.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think at some point, 3 times, people said, well, now take a decision. And I felt, I had to take a decision. So I decided to go for the folded gift boxes.
Right.
And also to increase prices.
And how long were you there at this company?
That was my first year where we took this decision.
Yeah.
So I stayed for 7 years. I was in
7
charge
years,
for 7
okay,
years,
wow.
yeah.
So over that 7 years, things improved, I hope?
Yes. Basically, when I joined the company, we were minus 10% of deficit versus sales, and when I left, we were plus 5%. So it's an improvement of 15 points.
50, yeah, it's
Yes.
big. It's big.
But it was difficult to go beyond because it was a very costly business model. Especially our warehouse was very expensive. So it was.
The items are also quite breakable,
Yes,
and
exactly.
bulky and
Yes,
heavy.
and 50% of the business was represented by bridal gifts and stuff like that. So the products needed to be checked in Japan. So there was a lot of work to be done in the warehouse. So the warehouse was very expensive. It was 10% of our sales. So compared to countries like in France where everything was sent from Germany. And they basically had almost no warehouse cost. That was a huge handicap compared to other markets.
And so, what happened after that? What was your next company?
I moved to Fauchon, so the French fast food company, which was an utterly different business model.
Totally different business.
Yes, very small team, but working with far bigger business in Japan than Villeroy & Boch. Working with business partners, mainly Takashimaya. So it's a licensed franchise business.
Okay.
So I was working with very different partners. So it was really...
What were the sort of main food lines that you were selling?
So there was a combination of imported products. So mainly Fauchon is famous in Japan for tea. Especially the apple tea is very famous. It's a gift product, typically that people sell in the seasonal the gift seasons. Ochugen or Seibo, but the daily business was bakery, mainly bakery, on a license with a local business partner.
Right.
So most of the business was bakery, but we also had different business partners. So it was not only food, but we also had bags. We had tableware, all licensed business.
How big was the Fauchon team in Japan?
Direct employees, 3.
Oh, okay. So really
small, very small business. Big business, small team, but a lot of indirect employees, especially the Takashimaya and all the licenses.
Department store people.
Because we present 20 department stores with a lot of staff for the bakery. So hundreds of people actually involved in the business, but on the payroll, only 3 people in Japan.
That must have been quite complex to have so many people indirectly employed by the brand, and you have that much control over them either, because department stores tend to have their own little empire there, and they run it the way they like it.
Yes. So we didn't have any direct control on the operations as such, but we had control on the brand and also product development. There was a chef that was checking all the recipes developed in Japan, and marketing, basically. So marketing and a lot of product development, looking for new licenses, trying. Actually, recently, Fauchon opened a hotel in Kyoto. Nice. So kind of thing. I worked for the last 2 years. I stayed almost 6 years, and the last 2 years was to find partners for the hotel.
Right.
And
with just 3 people full time, it must have been so unbelievably busy.
Yes, we were quite busy with all this business development aspect to find new partners. That was what I was spending most time on. Yes.
Yeah. And then what happened after Fauchon?
Then I moved to the current company, to Pierre Fabre. Almost 5 years ago.
5 years ago. Okay.
Yes.
And this is it's skincare, but it's skincare plus, isn't it? Sort of.
Well, it's Pierre Fabre is actually Pierre Fabre himself was a pharmacist, so he actually set up his company 60 years ago. So we are on the 60th anniversary. So it's a pharmaceutical company. 60% of the business is what we call dermocosmetics. The difference with regular cosmetics is that you have evidence-proved efficacy of the product on the skin or on your hair, whatever, and it's proved through clinical studies. So it's actually on people that you have a certain effect, efficacy on the. So that's the difference with a regular cosmetic product. And 40% is medicines. So it's typically we're quite strong in dermatology because it's our core, and also oncology, so against cancer.
Right. Okay.
And the medicine part, we also have some products in Japan. We have a dermatological product and anti-cancer product as well.
So the team in Japan now is how big?
So there are 2 entities. There is a joint venture with Shiseido since 1986. and distributes the dermocosmetics brand called Eau Thermale Avène. So Avène, it's the biggest brand of the group, actually, and it was launched since the beginning in Japan. Japan is the third market. If you look at the volumes, France is number one, China is number two, and Japan, and alongside, I would say, Germany, Italy, and Spain is the third brand for in the world for the brand, the Avène brand. And then we have distributors in Japan that import and distribute some of our other brands. So we have a haircare brand called René Furterer, distributed by Bluebell Japan. And we have three medicines, so dermatology, cancer, distributed by other Japanese companies. So I spend 80% of my time in the JV with Avène and 20% with the distributors.
Okay. So, but the team itself is how big? How many people?
The team itself, on the JV, 30 people. And for the other part, it's 8 people. 3 people for the distributors, and we have 5 people because we have I'm not in charge of it, but we have a small laboratory to develop dermocosmetics products for Asia, based in Opera City in Tokyo.
Oh, okay.
So there's a little team to adapt some products for Asia and to develop products.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. So, you've had a lot of leadership experience here over different companies and different businesses, actually, quite a broad range of expertise. So when you think back, you talked before about trying to engage people to think about, okay, we've got to think about the bottom line. And then you've had other experiences with different industries. What things have you found works well to get people behind you as a leader, to get them engaged? Okay, this is where we've got to go. Come with me, let's do it. How do you find getting Japanese people to come with you?
I think what is important is first to identify the key persons in an organization. And they're not necessarily always at the top. There are some key people that people follow. So they are key, I would say, influencers within the organization. And if you have them with you, if you got a buy-in from them, then you've done, I would say, more than 50% of the job to convince the others. In the case of my current company, we have what we call GM, general managers and we have 4 teams, and usually those general managers are quite key. If you convince them, to go forward then you will get a lot of buy-in from the rest of the team. It's the way it is. So of course it's very important to have also the president, to convince the president at the end of the day, but it's important to have those key persons convinced about what you want to do. That's a first thing I would say. And in terms of process is to take a lot of time doing. I believe very much in the Japanese nemaoshi thing, which is to organize a little one-on-one or 2-3 people meetings to exchange, to make to try to stimulate them to come back. I don't think it depends on the subject. Some shows that can be decided right away, and it makes the organization very agile. But for very strategic decisions, you need to take time, I think, because sometimes there's some resistance, and you need to take the time for people to think it over, not to push too much on them. Otherwise, you will not get enough buy-in to actually make it happen. So I think identify the right persons and take time. Nemaoshi and take time would be some key lessons I would have to put forward.
Time, how long is the time? Because, a lot of executives who are sent to Japan are on a sort of time frame of, you've got to do something. You're sent for a reason, right?
Yes.
Okay, we want something to be happening in Japan. And, the time frames they're given usually aren't too generous. So, particularly American companies are working on quarterly, reports to the market and, share prices bouncing around and this sort of thing. So the pressure on time is usually quite stringent. So when you say time, what would a typical time be we talking? 1 month, 3 months, 6 months?
I would say it depends on the topic. If it's a topic which is regardless of the seasonality, some decisions are better to be taken at a certain stage, in the planning process. Typically, you have a budget, and some topics could be addressed during the budget process. So in September and October. So if you are in June, and you consider that the topic must be managed by the budget, then you have maybe 3 months to deal with it. If you talk about a subject or a topic that is not directly linked to any kind of cycle during the year, then I would tend to say less than 1 month. So because you have a certain focus, you want the subject to go forward. So I would generally talk about less than 1 month, but in some cases, it needs to be involved with a full planning process, which is involving in that case maybe you need to think a bit 3 months ahead or something like that.
One thing's too, if you've got engagement, then you've got the door opens for creativity.
Yes.
Because if you are not engaged, you don't care. Creativity, you're not worried about it. But if you're engaged, then you actually care about what's happening at the company, what's happening with the business, and the potential is there to think about what we could do. And what have you found works well to get ideas out of people, get creativity? You talked before about bottom up and also top down.
Yes.
And that sort of bottom up idea generation. What things have you found works well?
I think workshops work pretty well, especially we did a workshop on new product development last year with a professional company for that. I think it was very useful and it was pretty bottom up, but it was structured. So you need bottom up approach. Workshops need to be very well structured. So if you already have the methodology inside the company, I would encourage you to do that. In some cases, the company, especially Pierre Fabre, has been going through a huge transformation plan. So we have a lot of workshops. So we do workshops at our country manager level, and then we do it. Once we've done it once, we can do it with our team. So that's one way to do it, or with the help of an outside company that is professional for that. So in our case, we used a French company. I won't tell them necessarily the company name, but and they helped us restructure in a few steps the approach for ideation of new product ideas. And so we did that last year, and we got like 6 or 7 different new product ideas that we shared with our headquarters for future product development.
So when you're doing that ideation, are they doing it in Japanese language, or are they doing it in
Japanese
English?
language? Yes, in Japanese language. I think the language, you have to get the language barrier out of the way. And in the case of the JV, most people are not very comfortable in English, speak English. They're far more creative in Japanese. So it was all in Japanese, and it was remote, because it was during the coronavirus.
Remote.
So it was on Teams.
That's interesting.
Yes, and we were using some tools, remote tools to actually do, the different workshops, the brainstorming.
Yes.
And so I think it was relatively fun. It was part of the objectives, and the beauty of this exercise was also team building, because when you ask people their opinion, and it was really fun because it was involving a lot of creativity, different teams. The the general managers and the president and the vice president were together, mostly together, and the others were in different teams to avoid that you have to put too much pressure by putting top management in the other teams, and they came up with quite interesting ideas that we shared with our head office.
And this is always the interesting part, though, isn't it? Okay, we come up with the ideas. Here's our ideas, and then you never hear anything more about it.
Yes.
Did any of these ideas actually get picked up and get executed upon?
We're not at the stage where they're getting picked up. We're still at the stage where we gave them to the head office. I think it would take time, to maybe a few years or before we see any result from that. But that was what we knew from the beginning. And yes,
it's important though, isn't it? Because often I've been in those rooms where every part of the wall is covered in, big sheets of paper with ideas written on it. The whole room's just covered in this stuff, And then you finish the brainstorming weekend or day or whatever it is, and then that's it. You never hear any more about it again. It's like done. What do we waste our time doing that for? Type of thing. So having some output is very, very important to go and get some sense of achievement or sense of worth or sense of. That was important that we did that.
Yes. So the output is important, but also through the process, the learning itself is important. What you learn, I would say. We had a workshop with the president and the general managers 2 years ago, which was about the purpose of the company, because Pierre Fabre actually thought about his new purpose, company purpose, and there was a full workshop to really digest, what was the meaning of that purpose. And I think the output is not so much about the output, but it's about what you learn. What you when you deep dive to think what is our mission, what is our raison d'être. It's in French raison d'être, which is why is the company here? What difference can it be to be in that world? And by doing the workshop, you actually deep dive and you appropriate yourself the purpose of the company. So that's also another way to look at it. Not necessarily an output as such, but the process itself is what you get from the workshop.
What about trust?
Yes.
Trust is important everywhere, of course, but I think particularly in Japan, it's such a defect-free zone, mistake-free zone. There's a lot of trust involved around people taking responsibility for work and, taking their jobs seriously. And so what have you found worked well in terms of getting trust built up between the team and yourself or the team and the organization?
To be honest, I've spent most of my time in Japan, so it's always difficult for me to make a comparison with the rest of the world. So what I said might apply to the rest of the world, actually. I think it starts with respect. Trust starts with respect. So respecting people, meaning listening to them, and always be polite. It means also when it's always about, positive feedback and avoid, to have negative feedback in front of others, so it's respecting people, I think is very important. There's one rule that I have is that I never send a negative feedback in writing. Never. It's always oral and one-to-one. If there is something that I expect from someone, and I try not to show it as a negative feedback, by the way. It's what we call more a feed-forward, which is what you should, it would be do if you could do that, So respect is one thing. I think the other thing is transparency. So really, it's always the same with my boss as well, and my rule is to give good news as soon as possible, and bad news even quicker than good news, and to be transparent, to share. What I did when I was at Villeroy was to share, the figures every month. Maybe it was not so fun, but it was to show them, we're not hiding anything. That sounds very basic, but in some companies they tend to hide figures and when things are not doing well, to share with the team and to show them. So transparency is very important.
You talk about bad news.
Yes.
Coming out quickly.
Yes.
But again, often in Japan, because it's got this no defect, mistake-free zone thing happening, people become very, very skilled at hiding bad news from the boss, particularly.
Yes,
right?
yes,
You're like the boss is the last one to find out, and normally finds out at the wrong time, or beyond the point where you can do anything about it. So how do you build the trust sufficient that people will bring bad news to you and feel comfortable they can do that?
Well, I think through regular communication, when I show them that their opinion is important for me, and I think if you talk to different persons, at some point you get a full picture. So you may get different ideas. It's like a painting, when you put different colors, and in order to get the full picture, you talk to different people, and some messages may be the same. Then you start thinking, that maybe here there is something good, or there's maybe an issue there. Of course, it has to be very focused. The topic has to be very focused. So, but I think it's by talking to different people, especially key persons in the organization, about a certain topic you're interested in, and you bring information from that. Trust is really about, as I said, is respecting them, listening to them, and being transparent with them, sharing your concern with them. I think that's probably the same everywhere in the world. And I found that most of the time you do get some information that maybe one person may hide, but by talking to different people in the organization, you may find some issues that people do not necessarily address during a regular meeting.
How do you handle mistakes?
Mistakes. When people make a mistake, first I want to make sure that they realize that they make a mistake. That they understand that they make a mistake. So I would make them speak, typically. So I think if they realize that they've made a mistake, there's no need to push too much on them, but to try to talk to them how they should avoid the mistake in the future. Or that's one way to do it. The other way is sometimes I do it. I'm very clear. I said this is the kind of thing that I would avoid if I were you. And sometimes the way I do it is that I show them that I've made similar mistakes, that we're on the same boat. I have an example, for instance, about this negative feedback communication in writing. I tell them, this is a rule that I've learned. I didn't do it in the past, but I learned that you should never send, with a lot of people in CC, a negative feedback to someone because, people will feel terrible about it. They will hate you for that. And the rule is that you should talk to the person and one-to-one, never CC everybody, etc. So, yes, one way to do it is to show them that that's the mistake. Sometimes I've done the mistake also in the past, so we are on the same boat, and so that they don't feel so bad about their mistake.
What about culture?
Yes.
What about building a culture? Because usually you have an organizational culture,
yes,
and the headquarters, and then in different countries you've got different cultures, languages, etc. So you have sort of like a subset culture in that market, in that team. So what have you found with culture? What works well to build a strong culture? And what is a strong culture, I guess, is also a good question. What is a strong culture and how do you build one?
I think the culture starts with the purpose, the mission of the entity. So you need to start with that. It's very important. Why are we here? So that's typically what we did 2 years ago when we had the new purpose of the company. In the case of the JV, it's a mix of Shiseido culture and Pierre Fabre culture. So there's a mix of the two. So we have to do both, basically. So we did also workshops for the values of Shiseido, and we did some workshop for the purpose of Pierre Fabre. So it's a kind of mix, and you kind of pick up what is the best, what speaks to you most. And typically, every time there's a newcomer, I share with them the purpose of the company, of Pierre Fabre. Because I'm on the Pierre Fabre side. So I try to convey them the purpose of the company. And I think what also is important is to be clear about the values, the values of the company. The company and the brand that you're working for. So that's something that also, if we don't have it, you have to do workshops to do. We didn't have for Fauchon in Japan, so I did a workshop with a professional to work about the values of the brand, the mission of the brand, and the vision. So I think this is purpose, so mission or purpose, values and vision that you should be working on to give you a strong culture for the company.
And how do you keep that alive? Because often
yes,
you go into companies and on the wall, you've got the beautiful words there. It's fantastic. No one even can remember it. You ask them about it, they don't know it.
Yes.
So how do you actually take it out of that sort of theoretical level or rhetorical level and get it into the human everyday level?
Well, first, it has to be very simple and easy to remember. Values, some companies have 10 values. It's very difficult. I think we have 3 max. So it should be easy to remember first. And then I think you should always, every time sometimes you take decisions, it's not in line with our mission. Or if you always have the theory and what's happening on a daily basis. There's a conflict with our mission, and this is something that you use as a kind of criteria to take decisions on a daily basis. Then people, kind of remember, the key pillars of the culture of the company. This is, I think, one way to do it. Typically, at Pierre Fabre, there are 4 pillars in our purpose. One of them is the green mission, is the environment, because Pierre Fabre he was very much to botanical culture. He loved plants, so nature. I mean, nature is very important. It's one of Peter. It's medical and nature, because we have a lot of natural products in our product. So when we take decisions, environment is very important. Now we talk about SDGs. It becomes some kind of a standard everywhere. But for Pierre Fabre, it's a very, very important criterion when you take decision. Is it good for the environment or not? Is a kind of thing. So always, using in the rhetoric those kind of pillars. When you talk to your colleagues, is something important, I think, which makes your culture be alive. And also, I think it's very basic, but going to the headquarters from time to time, giving the opportunity to every employee to go to the Aven village, to actually live, to feel it. I think it has to be very also. There's a sensorial aspect to culture, so you have to take every employee to the head office or to the heart of the company. That's very important. Over the past 2 years, it's been challenging. 2 or 3 years, it was impossible. But that's something that in principle you should do.
Try and get back to it.
Even for a secretary, everybody should go to the head office to really feel the company and try to go on a regular basis.
Wow. That's a big commitment. That's a big financial commitment.
Yes, but that's very important.
Very big financial commitment.
Yes.
What about if you're going to give some advice to someone who is going to be sent to Japan, they don't know Japan, they don't speak the language, they've got to come here and run the organisation, what would be some advice you'd give them to help them be successful?
As I said, be open. Be open to see things in an entirely different way, to be really challenged with what you've believed so far. That would be one thing. The second thing, so don't judge too quickly. Being open means don't judge too quickly. It means also, and that's something that I found during the first time I came to Japan, is that, that was very exciting to me, is that the conclusions of one day are contradicted by what you find the following day. Meaning you have a conclusion on day one, and you will find on day two something that would go against what your conclusions in the first day.
As a new leader, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. When you learn in Japan, so at some point you will be lost, and you have to accept that. So I think the third point would be to be patient.
Okay.
I think this is a country when you need to be patient. It doesn't mean that you don't do anything and you don't try to push things forward. But I think you need to be very patient with yourself and with others. And in one word, yes, you need to be open, to be very flexible in your mind, because that's the way, and then you will see that no, that's not exactly the way. So you need to be a bit patient to learn, about the culture here in Japan, and yes, and be patient for that.
And what about the language? Should they learn the language? You did, you studied it, but should they do it?
I think it depends on the circumstances. I think it's very difficult for an expat. 40 years old expat coming to Japan. I think it's important that they learn some basics of the language to be able to connect some way on their daily life, because it can be very frustrating not to be able to communicate, because a lot of Japanese cannot communicate. So I would say yes, learn the language, but don't necessarily expect to be able to work in Japanese. That's I think something I think you need to do quite early in the 20s. I did it when I was a student. I learned Japanese. I was 20. I started when I was 20, and I did all these internships, so I could work more or less when I started my career. But I think if you come even in the 30s or 40s with responsibility as an expat, I think it's very difficult to actually be able to work in Japanese. But I think you should learn to have a more pleasant daily life, which is important in terms of stress management, and also the way you can enjoy your life in Japan.
I notice I've got Aussie friends who, they started Japanese in high school.
Yes.
And I didn't start till I was 25. I'd studied Chinese at university, but then you start Japanese as an entirely different thing. Even the kanji are different because the Chinese have simplified their kanji, so it's not even the same kanji, right? And yet I found with them, they speak Japanese well without stress. Because they started younger, they just absorb the language more easily, I think.
Yes.
Whereas starting older, I'm coming from English and going into Japanese. They're just going straight into Japanese as a difference. So it's not tiring for them. Whereas I'm really concentrating, I've got to get the right format in Japanese, get the right vocabulary. I've got to really think. I'm thinking in English and then speaking in Japanese for the most part. But they're not. They're thinking in Japanese and speaking in Japanese. And I just felt, I noticed a difference between them and myself when I look at the ease with which they can deal with the language. So I know what you mean about starting early is good.
Yes. It's like, when you learn an instrument, the sooner the better. If you start 5 years old or you start 15, it makes a whole difference. But I don't think it's impossible. But you have to learn when you don't have responsibilities. I think it's very difficult to learn Japanese when you already have responsibilities
running the company.
As a manager running a company. But I would encourage people still to learn some basics to have a more pleasant daily life.
Fair enough too. So if we're going to give you a definition of leadership, how would you define leadership?
I think it's the ability to inspire others so that they do their best. And this is the kind of mission that I set myself. It's inspire, but it's also get inspired by others. I don't think it's a one-way inspiration. And it's why top down and bottom up is you are actually part of the process. It's not a leader is not someone who's just at the top and then there are people below him. I think he's within the cell. There's a kind of cell when some kind of chemical thing is happening, and the leader is part of it. Is in the formula. He's involved in the formula. So he also gets inspired by others, and this whole process creates a lot of energy. So the leader is a kind of catalyst that brings all the energy together so that people actually do their best. I was a Boy Scout, and from 8 to 12. I stopped after that because I had to go to Africa. But and the motto was do our best, So, and it's always part of my education from my mother. She always told me, about school. You don't need to be number one. As soon as I know that you did your best. So if doing your best is being number 10, it's okay with me. The kind of education I got,
Nice.
both from my mother and from my my mother's dad, so from my grandfather.
Okay.
Just think what you have to do, and it's something that I tend to think on a daily basis. What am I missing anything? Is there something that I should be doing and I'm not doing? This is the kind of thing that I'm thinking on a daily basis.
Very good. So let's stop there and let me thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very fascinating. I know we could speak for much longer. We could go much further. We've got limitations of time. So thank you very much for today.
Thank you.
And join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.